For as little as $1 per month, you can support independent journalism by supporting Mieum Media on Patreon. That's mere pocket change to support quality local content creation. To subscribe, visit patreon.com/MIEUM Media. Thank you to all paid subscribers for helping to grow Mieum Media and for supporting independent journalism. With the 2020 presidential race underway, it won't be long until each prospective candidate reveals their position on transgender issues. Due to overwhelming evidence, virtually every major medical or scientific body who takes a position has backed the legitimacy of transgender identities, and the internet has allowed multitudes of transgender people to share their experiences in public in a raw, unfettered manner. But many people are still grappling with what the implications of accepting transgender identities means for society, and the Trump administration has attempted to capitalize on this insecurity.
The Justice Department filed a brief to the Supreme Court arguing federal law does not protect transgender workers from certain types of discrimination.
Please be advised, he declared, the United States government will not accept or allow transgender individuals to serve in any capacity in the U.S. military.
Trump administration wants to legally define transgender out of existence by officially recognizing only a person's gender at birth. So even if a person is transitioned, they could be retroactively required to be identified as whatever gender they were born as, regardless of physical changes or how they choose to be identified.
Typically, traditional news sources focus on transgender issues are limited to participation in the military, access to bathrooms, and inclusion in athletics. But in order to broaden people's understanding of the transgender experience, Mieum Media spoke with Garrett Garborcauskas, a scientist born and raised in Connecticut, who is also a transgender man. He sat down with us to explain his story concerning an oft-overlooked issue, altering one's birth certificate.
First, you go to court and get a court-ordered name change. I took that to Social Security to change my name and gender. In Social Security, of course, with a note from my doctor. Once I got my new Social Security card, I brought that to the RMV to change my name and another letter from my doctor, gender on my driver's license. Once I had those documents, I took all of that to the passport office to change my name and my gender on my passport. This, all in all, took about 2 years to do and was upwards of $500. So a copy of my original birth certificate, I had a copy of my Social Security card, a copy of my court order for name change, and also a letter from a doctor saying that I was under clinical supervision by this physician for gender reassignment. And so Connecticut has a fantastic law that says that you don't need surgery, you just need to be under clinical treatment. So this could mean no physical or medical transition at all, which is really important because many trans people opt not to go through any medical intervention.
Let's back up. Why does the birth certificate even matter? According to private website dmv.org, your birth certificate is one of your fundamental identifying documents. It's used as a reference point for acquiring many other forms of identification. Unlike most advanced countries, the United States has no national identification system. Passports? Only 36% of people in the US have them. Driver's licenses? Those are issued on a state-by-state or territory-by-territory basis, and the results can vary. That's why the TSA only lets some states' driver's licenses be used for identification purposes before boarding a plane. Not to mention that not everyone has a driver's license or another form of state-issued ID. Social Security cards? They're nearly universal, but there's no photo, no biometric information, and was never intended for identification. Old Social Security cards even said "not for identification" on them. And pre-2011 Social Security cards are especially unsecure.
The first 3 digits are the state where the parents applied for the card, and the last 4 digits just count up in order, and the middle digits follow a regular pattern. So you can take your number, subtract 1, and that's a valid number.
Birth certificates are used for a number of different purposes, such as applying for a passport, applying for government benefits, enrolling in some schools, joining the military, claiming pension or insurance benefits, getting your driver's license, or getting a replacement Social Security card. Garrett, who is applying to med school, told Mieum Media that he had this in mind when he went through this process.
Now, because I'm entering a field where birth certificate may be necessary for identification, you never really know when you need a birth certificate. I know, when I went to get my license my first time, they asked for it or something like that. And so for me, the name and gender on my birth certificate didn't match the name and gender on my social security card, my driver's license, my passport, and that could be potentially dangerous. And so I decided that it was in my best interest to change it.
In 2015, the Connecticut legislature voted to allow people to change their birth certificates with a medical affidavit stating the applicant had undergone surgical, hormonal, or other treatment for gender reassignment. Prior to that, the gender on a birth certificate could not be changed without surgical reassignment. Not only did all Democrats vote in favor of the change, but over 70% of Republicans did as well. Some opponents argue that a birth certificate should be considered to be a historical document, and therefore should be unable to be changed. I asked Garrett what he thought about that.
It would be a lot different if a birth certificate was only used in the historical context. As of now, a birth certificate is used for myriad reasons, many of which are for identification. So as long as a birth certificate is being used to identify who you are right now, it needs to be able to be changed.
Garrett said that the process itself could be prohibitively expensive or difficult to navigate for many transgender people, and that his experience should not be used to make generalizations.
I'm a white, binary-ish transgender man who has a college education and who has a job in a respected field. I live in a state where my identity is protected and is protected as a part of the Hate Crimes Act as well. I can't be fired for being transgender. I can't be kicked out of the bathroom. I can't be denied public accommodations. In all of these ways, I am very privileged.
Although transgender history is an expansive topic, the first time many people were exposed to transgender experiences was through Orange is the New Black or hearing about Caitlyn Jenner. Despite the current administration's position on transgender rights, the fight is far from over, and stories, such as Garrett's, serve to complicate the narrative and show that transgender identity is anything but homogenous.
As long as we're focusing on these small things like where I can use the bathroom, we're not celebrating the gifts that the trans community has to give to the world. And I think it's so important to recognize that trans people are not a burden and that trans people have so much to offer to our community and to our culture and to our country.